let's move on to the Arizona Cardinals. And AJ, the Cardinals lost a big piece this offseason. Obviously, they brought in Kyler Murray. We talked about that at the beginning of the show. But they lost Chandler Jones this offseason to the Las Vegas Raiders. Now they have J.J. Watt there on the edge and moving him around. But who will be stepping up to replace Chandler Jones? Obviously, I want to say this before we get any further in the show. Obviously, you're not going to be able to replace the talent and replicate the talent of Chandler Jones. No one's going to be able to step in and be Chandler Jones. Tell me and tell the people at home who's going to be that dude who tries to fill the shoes of one Chandler Jones.
Yeah, that was perfect. You definitely helped me out a little bit. Said the first two things I was going to say. The J.J. Watt, I mean, that's surprising. That's not the focus to me, is not J.J. Watt. We understand what he brings as a veteran, but there's some other guys on this squad that, they can put some trust in. And it's always funny you come to me with these defensive questions at this point, because I always use that word unit. And for the first time, I think that the Arizona Cardinals are going to have to focus on that a lot more than any of their individual pieces because of the loss of a Chandler Jones. Now, there was a guy last season, Marcus Golden, who put up very similar production on the other side, also had himself an 11-sack season, and I think he might be the individual that you're hoping can spearhead this. But I really look towards, and it's funny, this is kind of becoming a theme, and we just talked about it. I kind of look towards a versatility piece in Isaiah Simmons. Last year, second year in the league, played his first full 17 games, got a lot of experience, had a pretty great season, 105 combined tackles. He's got the speed, the quickness. His body's getting a little bit more solid. He's 6'4", 245. I think he's that type of guy that you may move around, and maybe he's not been a sack guy since he's been in the NFL, but they used him a lot in different ways at Clemson, and I think Arizona was really hoping for him to come into his own and do that here in Arizona, and I think you see that this year. I think you may see him maybe get 4 or 5 sacks this year while playing anywhere he can on the line. And then they did draft a couple rookies that they're hoping to fill in and rotate. We talked about Cameron Thomas a little bit out of San Diego State. They really like his body, his player profile. They labeled him as a multi-scheme type of player, but the thing at San Diego State was he didn't play a lot of NFL-level talent yet. So he's still got a little bit of a gap to really fill in. And we all know I love me a Myjai Sanders out of Cincinnati, but his numbers won't show you.
I knew this was coming.
You think I was going to leave my guy out? Absolutely not. Myjai Sanders played on a great defense, though. So he's going to have to come up, too. He wasn't able to do it all by himself.
I knew that was coming. I knew he could not go a whole segment with a prominent Cincinnati player. Well, even though he's like 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th on the depth chart without bringing his name up. Look, I think AJ, he mentioned a bunch of names there, and I think that says one thing. That's exactly what they have to do. They have to have production from a bunch of guys because it's not going to be one guy. I'm sorry, J.J. Watt, but J.J. Watt is older. He's not the same player he once was. Especially when he's going to be the focal point and he's the one that's going to be double teamed. You're talking about a guy that's a 10-year veteran that just doesn't have the burst or the get off that he used to have. He's going on in his age 33 season. Look, Arizona's defense is bad. And they got a couple of pieces. You talk about the Budda Bakers and Isaiah Simmons of the world that we like, and Zaven Collins maybe. But overall, when you start to look at their back end, and we talked about this before, the secondary is not very good. They are going to need their front pass rush to get to the quarterback. And the loss of Chandler Jones is such a huge impact to that. It doesn't allow them to get to the quarterback, which is then going to hurt already less talented back end. So I think it's got to be guys that step up. And maybe it's some of those guys that AJ mentioned. So maybe it is a Marcus Golden having a breakout season and getting more sacks this year. Maybe it's a Kingsley being better. Maybe it's a Fotu Leaky being able to stop the run and allow the pass rushers to get up the field and make plays. So I don't think this is one guy I'm looking at and saying, okay, you need to step up. I think it's more of a team effort. They're going to need to be deep. They're going to need to be able to rotate those guys, and those guys are going to have to make impact plays in order for this Arizona defense to compete with the Rams offense, the Packers offense, some of these high-powered offense in the NFC, and even the ones that they play in the AFC. So it's going to be a team effort.
Thank goodness they signed their quarterback. A lot more shootouts in that division with the way that their secondary is barbecue chicken. You know, you can eat, you can get all over it, man. I mean, it's all about it.
Yeah. Hey, barbecue cardinal, not barbecue chicken.
Wow.
Weeding birds. That's what it is. We talked about with the Rams, and we kind of broke down what to really look for when judging and kind of determining who's going to be the guy in the secondary for the Rams. Arizona has a hole to fill with DeAndre Hopkins being out for 6 games to start the season. Obviously, they brought in Hollywood Brown to maybe fill that wide receiver 1 spot. But outside of Hollywood Brown, what should fans be looking at during training camp at the wide receiver position, Aaron?
I don't want to sound simple, and I know we don't like do it. I don't think they're looking for anything. I think you're going to get the exact same team that you had last year without DeAndre Hopkins. Still AJ Green, still Rondale Moore for those trick gadget plays, and then they like an Antoine Wesley to come in around the red zone. He's a bigger body receiver and play with those jump balls. I don't think it's one, like there's some special formula they're looking at. I just see that offense looking the exact same until DeAndre Hopkins gets back. Now, once DeAndre Hopkins gets back, I think you can start to do a little bit more, because then you put DeAndre Hopkins on one side, Hollywood Brown, you can move around. That's a vertical deep threat. And then you can mix in a guy like AJ Green on the outside, a Rondale Moore with the versatility. But until DeAndre Hopkins gets back, it's going to look a lot like the end of last year. It's going to be some big plays to Hollywood Brown, some red zone looks to Antoine Wesley, and AJ Green will show up every other game and be like, oh, maybe he's still good again. Like, I don't know that it's going to look a whole lot different. And I know that sounds kind of like maybe it's not a whole lot of substance, but you just swapped out DeAndre Hopkins for Hollywood Brown. Hollywood Brown's not better than DeAndre Hopkins, so I don't think it's going to look better. He's basically maybe a glorified version of Christian Kirk. That's what Hollywood Brown is to me.
Forgive me, because you just said the name I was wondering, and this is going to sound so gross, but it's a question you have to ask because of what they invested in him. Without Christian Kirk and with D-Hop being sidelined for 6 weeks, do you think they try to get Andy Isabella in there for some deep shots with his speed and whatnot? I said it was going to sound gross.
I think honestly, I think that's Hollywood. I think Hollywood is taking the Christian Kirk role, and I think you're going to see AJ Green, Antoine Wesley. They do like Wesley. He's a really good blocker. Yeah. He's a big physical guy. I think that's who really plays that DeAndre Hopkins role. And then you have Rondale Moore running the little scat stuff. I think Hollywood is more of that Christian Kirk guy. I can't believe in Andy Isabella at this point in time. He just can't.
Don't forget about the better Christian in that room, right? The ATL legend, Mr. Christian Blake. Christian Blake, wide receiver ATL. AJ's all about him.
So we're moving
words in my mouth. Stop putting words in my mouth.
Let's see.
Christian Blake will have 2 touchdowns this year.
Just like Skronek.
17 games.
Christian Blake might have 2 snaps.
Right.
Just like Skronek. That's what it is.
Right.
That's really what it comes down to.
2, I'm throwing a party in his honor.
I bet you are. I bet you would.